Hello, good night, everybody. How are you? We pray that tonight has met you in a good place and that indeed we're enjoying the week so far and that we are in an even better place than we were last week. So, welcome to Muddy Puddles. We're going to give a few minutes for persons to join in. So share it as you come on, share it, like it. We hope somebody might be blessed or encouraged even tonight. And we are so grateful that you have tuned in weekly to be with us.
Indeed. Good night, everybody. And as Nevin said, we're very happy that you have taken the time to just share with us. Hi, good night,
Hi,
Stacey.
Stacey.
I see Shaquilla. Good night. It's just how God has led us in recent times just to minister to people in another way.
Good night, Alan, and congratulations.
Yes, congrats. So,
welcome.
We just want to...
Welcome to the club.
to encourage people. Our relationships tend to be a good representation of what happens in our heavenly relationship as well. And so we want people to thrive in their relationships. Life will continue to be life. Difficult times will come, but we want you to know that even in the muddy puddles, even in the stormy weathers, you can survive, you can thrive, and you can enjoy it.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you're not going to cry, doesn't mean you're not going to shout sometimes or have painful moments, but the muddy puddles are breeding grounds for growth.
That's right.
Yes.
So share the live. You can share it on WhatsApp, copy the link and share it on WhatsApp, and share it on Facebook, like it and share it. So we're still allowing for some more persons to come on. Sister Erlene, good to see you. God bless you. I'm sure Canada is...
Not as hot as this. Is it as hot yet?
No, it might be warming up, yes. Very hot, yeah.
Gosh, you have some heat here.
Yeah. And we have some flies too that love
Some
this
bugs.
kind of weather, some bugs. So just share it. We're also sharing and like it. So if you see us looking down a bit, then that is what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, today is an interesting day in our history. I don't know if we'll share next week about that.
It is.
But 11 years ago, I landed in Tobago, fresh out of seminary, and excited about taking up my first call as pastor. And so that's 11 years ago. Some of you know our story already. Good to see you, Pastor Pilgrim. Some of you know our story already. It was when my mother, my younger sister, and
Just dated them.
no, a cousin came too. I think it was one of my cousins, Aunt Hazel's youngest, I think. Yeah, it's 11 years ago. And so, Mommy met her on the plane. Said,
Met her.
met Billy, yes. She was Billy Sterling then. And she's now Billy Sterling, Lois. And she said, I was sitting next to a nice Antigua girl. I didn't pay much attention to it. And when we connected, I said, I know you. She said, I know you. I think I know you. And she was on her way to Trinidad. And I was enthused immediately. So I went to Facebook.
So we're back at Facebook, you realize
We're
that,
back at Facebook. Facebook has been good to us. Facebook has done some not so good things in its management and so forth, but I think generally it has been of a benefit rather than anything else. So tonight we are discussing family matters, and we are suggesting that essentially our families or families of origin that in fact they impact on us significantly. They impact on us significantly, and they influence our relationships, our marriages, and so forth, right? So the family matters, or family matters as it relates to our relationships, and directly or indirectly, it will impact how you love and how fulfilling your relationships can be. Yes? So what's the family of origin, Billy?
Okay, so good night, everybody, again. And when we talk about the family of origin, we're talking about the family setting in which a person was raised. Now, it doesn't have to be biological family because many persons were not raised with their biological families. It is really that household, the types of interaction you had as a child. So we call those key persons your primary caregivers. So it doesn't matter also if you were raised in a single parent home, a nuclear home. What matters is the environment, the psycho-emotional, spiritual environment in which you were raised, and how that impacts how you process the world, process your life, process others, and ultimately function in relationships. So keys to understand and be aware of the impact of your family of origin. So if you were raised in a foster care program, if you were raised in an adopted family, in your biological family, if you're a single parent, just be aware that how the interactions go further than just your childhood and your childhood experiences. Yes.
So each family has traditions. You can tell me some of those traditions. Each family has a way they do things, how they cook, how they clean, how they deal with clothes, how they interact, their values, how they resolve conflicts.
How they fight.
They have a heritage, your family has a history, and all of that can have positive and negative impacts on your relationships and on your marriages. Good night, Pastor Gloria, and good night to all of you who have tuned in. So your family of origin is absolutely critical because you bring with you whatever you have learned. Now, understand this. When two people come together in a relationship, in a marriage, that means you're bringing with you all the things that you have learned over time. In fact, you have learned more in your family
than anywhere else.
So when I got married to Billy, I brought with me and she brought with her everything she learned from her family and all the ways of operation and so forth. We then have to come together now and build something together. Yes?
Yeah.
So so those who are newly married, like Alan, God bless you, Alan, and all those who are looking to be married, I want to know family origin matters. As a matter of fact, the impact of our family origin many times carry more weight in our relational operations and our relationships than our marriage vows do or relationship promises do.
Yes. But let me add to that. You talk about those who are newly married or looking to get married. Even persons who have been married for a long time, many times because persons are not taught this, they are operating in an extended marriage relationship, not realizing how up to the present time their family of origin is still impacting.
That's right. So sometimes you don't even realize.
You don't realize. And it's important, I just want to reiterate what Nevin said. The thing is, when you marry somebody, that is why we said last week, you take the time to get to know the person. Even if you take a short time, make sure you spend the rest of your marriage getting to know the person, getting to know their family. Because when you walk down the aisle, I guarantee you, hooked onto the trail, as lovely as it is the whole family that girl came from.
All the baggage,
all the
successes,
all the roses, all the thorns,
all the skeletons,
and hooked on to the guy's coattail is his issues, his whole family. So some people like to say, well, I don't care about the mother because I'm marrying the mother. I guarantee you, somewhere down the road, mommy's going to come out for your son. There's a Geico commercial I like where they talk about Geico can't prevent you from becoming your parent, but it can save you quite a lot of money. The truth is, whether we want it or not, whether we realize it or not, eventually some features come out.
Yeah.
The thing for
intentionally
us
and
to do,
unintentionally.
and unintentionally is for us to now pick and harness the good aspects and put aside, disconnect.
So there are good things about your family.
That you
most
can hold
families,
on
there's
to.
some kind of good. I don't care
Yeah,
what it is.
no matter what it is, yeah.
And most families have some things that are not so good.
Yes.
There are no perfect families. You have never read of them. You have never seen it in the Bible.
No.
Even Jesus' family wasn't a perfect family. They started out thinking Mary had misbehaved. Yes. Joseph was trying to put her away quietly and honorably. So, I mean, you don't need, David's family. We can go down the line. There are no perfect family. So everybody comes with something. So what are some of the examples of some of those habits and traditions and so forth? Well, eating habits, for example. I never forget this. Somebody shared this with me. When the person got married, they came from one country, another family. By the way, the fact that we're male and female is already an issue.
Yeah.
Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, they say. But it might be even further apart than that.
Yeah.
So, male and female, that's an issue.
It's a difference.
Interracial, big difference.
Cross-cultural.
Cross-cultural, so you're from Jamaica or he's from St. Kitts.
Yeah.
Villages.
Denominations. One of these days we're going to share our story because I cross borders, theological borders, denomination, everything. And it's quite a transition.
Yes.
And that's why I say nothing in life, no matter how muddy or rough it gets, you can allow God to make it be good. His Bible says all things work together for good. But that's just an aside.
So let me get back to the food. So in the man's family, you ate the wings for the chicken. The chicken wing, the flap. In her family, they didn't. So one time he bought chicken and went somewhere and came back. When he came back, the wife was cutting off all the flaps. And for him, that's the sweetest part. That's just that in their family they didn't eat it, in his family they did. Yes? No, that may seem like a nonsense issue. But some people take these things very seriously.
Yeah.
Parenting. Right? In one family, they beat till they don't know what to do. In another family, they never do any sort of corporal punishment.
Yeah.
They just talk it out. Yes? So that will come with its own complications. And then there's some generational patterns. Yeah. Some of us don't identify them. Some of them ignore. We're going to talk about that. Some people ignore them. What are the generational patterns? And this is not to make you feel any less than or anything like that, but we just have to acknowledge it.
Be aware.
Does it seem like every family ends up being a single family in our side of family? There are no men?
Yeah.
Or does it seem like there are a lot of divorces? Yeah. Does it seem like there is some domestic violence? We notice granny experience it and then mommy come and do it.
Auntie, uncle.
Is there drinking in the family? Is it generational? So you have to check these things. Biddy, what do you think?
Well, definitely, and I think it is important that you don't only check it, but you be upfront. First of all, there are two things. You have to be aware with your own family patterns. And a lot of us are not, because there are things that we take for granted. It's just how we like to say that. That's how my mommy is. That's how daddy is. That's how we do it in our family. But we don't realize how ingrained they can be. And then when you're connecting with somebody, it's important that you are open and honest as much as you can be about it. And then the key thing is, if somebody, your partner, brings it to your attention, brings something to your attention that you may not be aware of, especially if it is repeatedly, it's okay for you to stop and say, what is it I'm missing here? And do your own investigation into your family line. We had the term.
We're going to come to that just in a moment.
So
we're going to give you a new term we're coining. So a key understanding to have is that our family origin shapes us
Mm-hmm.
in more ways than we even realize.
Yeah.
The family relationship is the first intimate relationship of your life,
Mm-hmm.
and you apply what you learn there to later relationships. I think Zia said that in 2018. It is also where you may learn how to constructively communicate, or perhaps the inverse, to yell, to scream when you have a disagreement. So we're asking you a question. I don't know if some of you will answer.
Please answer, because we want to know, just to let you know, other persons know that this is just a reality.
Yes.
What are some of the patterns?
What are some of the family patterns that you can recognize from your family of origin, and how is it impacting your relationships?
So, if we could share one of ours, just to start.
You want me to share?
Yo, go ahead. You share.
So I did what they call a genealogy. We're going to give you a different term. When I did Introduction to Marriage and Family Therapy. And I realized, and Mommy might be watching,
That's okay.
that quite a few of the my uncles, I think, included my father, that there were some issues with marriage and so forth, and I saw it happening over and over again. In fact, there were very few marriages that were doing well. A number of divorces, or there were a number of issues. Yes? Some fought through the issues and got better. Some others, it didn't work out like that. And then I saw it cropping up everywhere. 10 uncles on my father's side, 2 aunts, and not many relationships were doing well. And that's just a fact. I hope that nobody feels any particular way because of it. So when I saw that, I said, this is not something I want to see replayed in my life. Yes? And so I had to look at myself and assess and see where is it that I can avoid it. How do I avoid it? Yeah? You have one?
Yeah, and I think, well, we've opened about this. We both come from families that the marriages didn't go well. Mine is divorce and separation. So we,
No.
whatever.
The status. Good night, Mommy.
But they just didn't do well.
Right.
And so one of the things I realized in my family, I was thinking as we were preparing, that communication was a big hindrance. So I never grew up seeing my parents communicate. There's a picture I have of my parents. It's the only picture I know of them together, beside the wedding pictures, which we have never seen. But it's the only picture, and because I'm the last child, so I came when things had already gone a little bit sour. So for me, I never saw marital communication in my home. I saw it other places, thank God. I had my aunts and her husband, and my cousins and their husbands and wives that I saw that in. But in my home, that was not a big thing. What I saw when I was able to see something is that whenever things got heated, one partner shut down. And that just sent everything out. And that is something I realized early in marriage, that I was one who, you know what, when things got a little bit too much for me, I'm like, I'm done with this, and I just clam up. So it was a pattern that I consciously had to become aware of. And I remember one time after we had an argument, and I started to shut down, I was like, Billy, you're shutting down, and this is not going to take you anywhere. And I just had to take my time, breathe a little bit more, reopen my mind, reopen my mouth, not in terms of argument, but sharing, so that you could have resolution to the conflict. Yeah.
And it's still a work in progress for us. Yes? So you can't solve what you don't acknowledge.
Yep.
If you don't remember anything else we talk about, you can't solve what you don't acknowledge. What are the generational patterns you have seen in your family? Yeah? We don't want to be all well, I don't call it negative. I think this is positive. But there are some good things too. There's some traditions. By the way, you have to understand that every tradition that you had in your family does not automatically transfer to your new family.
Yes. And it doesn't have to. It doesn't
have
automatic, and you don't have to take everything. Okay, let's take it like this. Let's take the cooking. I am one, everybody knows me, I'm very holistic, so I believe in health.
Yes.
And people like to talk about, well, my mother was diabetic, so you know, and I'm normally stopping them like, are you your mother? And I tend to tell people, you don't inherit diabetes, you learn how to cook. That's the principle. So if you grew up in a family where there was just generally unhealthy eating and you saw the negative effect of that, you have a choice in your family to decide, am I going to continue cooking that way, or am I going to do something different, keeping the spices
That's
that I
right.
loved in the food?
Here's the thing. So you have to be careful you don't bring into your marriage not only your negative
Sorry.
family patterns, but be careful you don't bring into your marriage the same kind of relationship that you had before. Let me explain. So if you had a close relationship with your father or your mother, you have to be careful you don't bring your mommy or your daddy into it. You see, to your daddy being a part fully of your life, knowing every detail of your life.
His opinion matters.
That's right. But when you tie the knot, when you come into a marriage relationship, daddy can't continue to be that same kind of person. Yes? No, I said that because that may be a tradition in your family.
Yes.
Maybe it's normal for daddy and mommy to have an integral part of the decisions. Let me tell you, marriages have gone bad because nobody set boundaries. By the way, is that a pattern, right?
Yes.
Where boundaries are not set.
Oh, yes.
Also, gosh, mom.
Enmeshed boundaries.
Enmeshed boundaries. So sometimes daddy is too involved. I know marriages have gone bad in 6 months because daughter could not leave daddy out of
son couldn't leave
mommy.
Yeah.
Or grandmother or whatever. You have to be careful. And it may be a family tradition where everybody knows everything.
Yep.
But the new family may not operate like that. Maybe she or he may come from a family where they didn't share things like that.
Yes.
And so there's where things can immediately get bad.
Yes.
And another thing, maybe your family always met, this is a simple thing, on Christmas Day. And you have been doing it for 30 years because you've been alive 30 years. But the new family comes now, you get married to another person who has a different tradition, and the daughter the lady might say, we have to go this year. It's our first Christmas. You mean we have to go over by and and maybe you have to learn to compromise too. But remember, you're in a new family.
But the thing is,
you have to establish your own traditions now.
Establish your own traditions, and you're going to establish it based on what both of you are bringing into the relationship. So, like for our family, my family, or my extended family meets on Christmas Day. Your family meets on New Year's Day. So it kind of worked well for us because then we don't have to act.
So we can go
in Antigua. We don't have to argue because Christmas Day, I'm going to be hungry. Maybe it's a good thing. Christmas Day, we're at my family, and New Year's, we're at his family. But the point is, whether or not that was the case, we would have had to decide what the situation is. Because I know in my family, we've had persons who have gotten married and the spouse is not too keen, and we're very critical of the I'm being honest, and I love her. We're very critical of love them because I'm more than one. Critical of the family. I'm like, she don't know this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what Ione's children do, grandchildren, great grandchildren. You can't let the husband come in and say that, but the truth is we've had to accept that she has to set her own family situation
and tradition.
So I want to ask a question now, and so again we want boundaries, just indeed.
Nobody has shared with us.
Please share. We're making the comments. Thank you. But here's what. What about the situation we're having now a lot where we have a lot of women, I'm one of them, who are very strong women because they were raised by strong women, whether single parent.
Where daddy may not have been around.
Or even where daddy was around. Because what I'm realizing is that we have a lot of men in the families, but they're so insignificant in their role. Right? That the women, the wives, still become the more powerful ones in the interaction. The fathers are emotionally absentee. How do we help couples where the man comes from a relationship where the man is man, or he's been taught that, however, and the woman comes from a relationship where the woman is taught to be a strong black woman or whatever race you are, and look out for yourself. How do we get those two to come together and work?
Right, so that's challenging. It starts with the recognition. That's why we say you have to get to know what your family is about, the patterns and so forth.
Yeah.
But you also have to spend time to get to know the next family. Watch them in their interactions.
Yeah.
That's why you may not like the family gatherings, but the
It's a good
gatherings
place.
might be revealing.
Yes.
You might
You hear the
you
conversations.
see in the gatherings, it's not so staged.
That's
You
it.
see the real interactions.
Yes.
So go to the family gatherings. You get to see
Yes.
how people interact and so forth, and then you have to take your cue from that.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that your family experiences, the traditions, the good and the bad, have helped to shape the person.
Yes.
So if you're not used to a strong male figure, and then you believe in my marriage now, I have to still operate like mommy did, then that can end up being some place of clashing. Maybe you did not see a father around or a mother around, because there's situations like that. You have to bring that to bear and understand that maybe you're going to have to do some self-reflection and assessment so that you can get better in interacting in this new family.
But it's also the understanding of the partner on the other part. So let me just put this in here. Let's look at some of what we're talking about in how it could affect the family of origin.
Okay, before you do that though, so I just want to say this. As a marriage counselor, I've counseled prepared persons for marriage. Billy has done a lot of counseling as a professional counselor. I noticed that a lot of marriage preparation literature and so forth didn't stress enough on family of origin.
Yeah, they're doing it now more.
They're doing more now.
Yeah.
So before you get married, check your family history, the pattern, and do the same for your spouse to be the spouse to be, or even your present spouse.
So in that, I could say fall in love with the partner, but try to fall in love with the family also. And even if you can't fall in love with the family, because some families are hard to love, if you can't fall in love with the family, at least have that appreciation and that understanding of the family, the systems, the ways of operating. Because ultimately they're going to come and affect things like the way you love. It's going to affect the way you communicate. It's going to affect the way you look at conflict, how you handle conflict. It's going to affect your parenting styles. It's going to affect the way you deal with issues, even trauma or hard issues like we're talking about money puddles.
That's right.
These are the things you have to be aware of when you are getting involved with the family, not just the individual, but the family. And
So
go ahead.
So the issue is not to blame your parents. We don't want to, when we finish with this, blame mommy or daddy, or your
auntie or uncle,
or
whoever raised you,
or your family origin of family of origin experiences, for who and how you are today. We don't want you to blame them or blame that, but it's about understanding how the interactions modeled for you many of the behaviors and the mental patterns and so forth that you have and you use today. Right? So it's just to acknowledge it, not to blame anybody. It's to acknowledge it so you can take control of the direction where you want to go. So the question, what will you say to someone who doesn't know your family traditions or what they did before? How do you deal with that? That's interesting. And when you say family traditions, I am also thinking family patterns and so forth. How do you deal with that if you don't know? Well, you might have to ask some questions. Are there people who are still alive? Yeah, who might be able to reveal what happened, or what have you, Billy?
Well, let me add to that. Let me tell you something about family patterns. They don't have to be written down on a scroll or in a book. There's something called norms. They are unconsciously, a lot of them are unconsciously transmitted from generation to generation. So we have norms, the unspoken rules. So let's say, for instance, in a conflict, our family we don't do conflict. So whenever something really harsh arises, everybody just closes their door and go to the room.
Or walk out.
Or walks out. That is a norm. That's an unwritten rule. If there's a situation...
Or you saw it and you may not believe it or accept it, but you saw it and so it influences you.
So there's some things, very strict particular patterns where they may say, well, like for us in Sterling, we say you must go college. That is a thing, you know. It's a unspoken rule, but that's a philosophy that we have, and that is how we are raised to think and to operate. But then there's an unspoken rule, also unspoken rules that we have in terms of interaction, where our interactions in our relationships tend to be more rigid in terms of our boundaries. So we're very clear with, this is who I am, this is who you are, this is the clear line of demarcation. Sorry, don't cross that. No, it's not necessarily good to be so rigid, but that's an example of an unwritten rule, whereas you must go to college because education is the secondary thing to godliness that's going to improve your life, that we were taught mouth verbally, and everything about our living that was reinforced in our life, right? So it's you would see some of it coming out, and some of it will, even if they don't have somebody to pass it on, you will see it somewhere through the interactions. Their words will bring it out. And then, as Nevin said, just ask somebody. Listen, neighbors can sometimes identify family patterns for you. Because when you're in a system, sometimes you're not aware of the system. But neighbors who had a close enough relationship with that family, because let me tell you, if it's one thing, the auntie, the uncle, the cousin, everybody, this is how they operated. And it seems to be a pattern, right? So sometimes you can get to persons who are close to them.
So Billy's coining a word there. We're calling it family contact tracing. You know, we're talking about contact tracing now with COVID. So it's called family contact tracing. Billy?
Yes, so it's just, never mentioned the word genogram. So in the more professional terms, you would use the genogram where you plot your family setting. And I want somebody to think about doing this, even if you're married already, especially if you're at a place where your relationship is having some challenges and you're trying to figure out where is the starting point. Yes, the argument started when she said your food didn't cook good and thing, but where did that come from? What did the emotion and the reaction come from? It's where you sit down as far back as 3 generations. You can plot your family. So let's say, for instance, Neville and I are here. We are one generation. The next generation above us would be our parents, and the generation,
and their uncles, and their siblings,
yes,
and their children,
right? And then the generation above that would be our grandparents. You can actually lay
and their
out,
siblings.
Yes, simple things you will be able to see in that plot if you plot that out. And if you want anything, we can sit down with you if you want to talk to us about it. You will be able to see if things like marriages. Was marriage a big thing in this family line? Did people get married, or did they just necessarily cohabitate, or just have visiting relationships that yielded children? You will be able to see things like divorces also. And if you do a more intense one that's linked towards relationship, you will be able to see things like types of conflict, if you know them, and you can get to know them by asking the questions. Types of conflicts, how they were resolved, if they were resolved, types of losses, how deaths came about, and many other things in the relationship pattern can be laid out in this contact tracing. So you're taking yourself at least 2-3 generations back to see how my family lived. All right, and see how much of that is being reflected now in your current relationship.
And even some of the things that they did, was granddad a alcoholic?
Right.
Nobody likes to talk about that in the family or whatever. We're going to talk about it in a moment. Or whatever the issue may be. Yes, is communication the key to successful relationship? It's one of the most important keys. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a moment. So yes. Really, really, really important.
But even that, you can look when you're doing a tracing in your family. You may not be able to go as far back as 3 when it comes to communication if you don't have facts. But look at your family of origin. How did we communicate in my family? How did we communicate at all? Did we communicate by shouting? Did we communicate by cursing? I can think of a situation back home of a family that we're very, 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 very known. And their mode of communication was rather loud and just always cursing. So the children were literally cursed with curse words. Like, get off from a chair and don't do that. And it was not just one, it was a family, and everyone in the family except one, probably, I think, communicated like that. And so the mother actually communicated like that. So
Billy's touching one of the things that we want to focus on, expression of love. This is where you see it manifested. Expression of love and communication. Now there are plenty areas where you could identify in terms of what are the ways people operate in the families. But we're just going to touch a few today.
But let me add
Yes.
before you go that, right? I want to say to us tonight that because that was a situation in your family, the pattern in your family, it doesn't mean that you have to operate like that.
That's right.
It may inform it, but with knowledge and the willingness to change and to learn,
And the Spirit of
especially
God.
right with the Holy Spirit, because the Bible says, any man in Christ is a new creature.
creature.
All things are passed away, all things became new.
Yeah.
Even
There
if
can
your
be the
mother,
renewing
your
of your
father,
mind.
your grandfather, your grandmother were alcoholics, or infidelity was big in your family, if you are in
Abuse.
Christ, once you are aware of it, and the Holy Spirit will show you, you are able to make a choice to be different. So the changes really come through conscious effort,
Right.
through awareness, and through the changes, the
Right.
habits, the actions.
And I can tell you something. I determined I will not be another statistic in my
In the family line.
I decided that. I said I'm not going to operate like that. So it's more than talking,
Yeah.
but you have to resolve in your heart. They said Daniel purpose in his heart
Purpose
that
in
he
his
was
heart.
not going to define. So you have to purpose in your heart.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Right.
do things a little different. The areas that we're going to focus on: conflict management and expression of love and communication.
Yes.
Oh, that can vary in families.
Finances.
Yeah, we're going to get to the finances.
Right.
So, in one family, love is expressive. Oh, they hug up, they kiss up.
PDA, public display
Yes.
of affection.
I love you. Yes.
Holding hands, kissing in public.
The
And
children say, I love you.
what was yours?
It wasn't expressive like that.
Okay.
But it wasn't without expression. Mommy
Right.
was more expressive. Daddy, not at all.
Well,
Not in that way.
for me, I always was not, well, my father left when I was little, so I didn't get much. But my expression was not that open either. Actually, our love came to an understanding that I am providing for you, I am there for you, and I will not let you be harmed.
Yes, and that's good love too.
Right, but then we didn't have that, give me a hug, let me hold your hand, let me rub your hair. So sometimes when I see myself doing that to Ethan and the children here, I'm like, boy, I really learned that somewhere else, because we didn't get hugs. We didn't get hugs that often. But
Maybe
we knew...
maybe I influenced you.
Well, you did too, because you remember we said he's a touchy-feely guy. But we knew our mother loved us, but she was not
Yeah.
an expressive demonstrator
Yeah.
of love.
And in my case, mommy was more expressive, daddy not so much. Yes, I can probably count the amount of times that physical expression came from my daddy. No, I knew he loved me and loved us, but it wasn't expressed like that. And when I look back, check the family, it may have been as a result of family experiences and so forth. And by the way, we know that our grandparents, check them, almost all of them did not express love so openly.
Yeah.
They like say, well, you know me love you.
Yes. Let me put food on the table,
Yeah.
and the thing is, they would give you the best, and giving you the best is a demonstration of love. But then there is that tangible
That need for expression,
that
affirming words and so
Yes,
forth. Right.
yes.
And so some families expressive, other one not so much.
I can think of a
When-
situation where a child will do well in school, and because children crave that affirmation, and the child will say, "But mommy, I did really well." But what do you expect to do? You know, I haven't been a workshop, you said that. But another family would say, "Oh, this is awesome.
come give
Let
me
me
a
give you a
hug."
hug, and I'm going to buy you a tablet." Well,
Yeah.
well, tablet nowadays, but
Whatever it is.
a CD player, whatever it was in those days. But those things trickle down into how you interact.
Right. So this can impact your marriage and your relationship.
So how then do you show affection to your partner? If you are honest with yourself, go back and check yourself. Look at yourself now, how you're expressing love to your partner on a regular, what's your normal way of expressing it, and link it to your family of origin. How did you express it? Was it?
It may be similar.
Very similar.
Maybe
Yes.
some other, but the thing is, you can come from a family where they don't express, but then you learn a different way, and then you become expressive. The key is when the two people come together, how is it that they express their love, and is there possibility for you to grow in that expression?
Yes.
Because you have to meet your spouse's need. Maybe they are remember we talked about love language last week.
Yes.
Their love language might be physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't learn physical touch as an expression of love when you were growing up.
Acts of service.
Acts of service. So then you have to try to learn how to express because that spouse needs that kind of thing.
Yes.
And so here's where it can become an issue and challenge.
Yes.
And somebody saying, I can't remember ever hearing those words from my mother, but I'll never question whether she loved me. It's so true.
Yes.
But you see, your mommy was a creature of her family and a creature of her time too.
Mm-hmm.
And so some families just didn't operate like that.
Yes.
We don't know the explanation for it.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's people of African descent,
historical as well.
people of the Caucasian descent are different. We don't know. Yes, but I believe we can learn how to express love.
And Christ
in
shows
both
us.
ways.
Christ shows us that he demonstrates it, but he also said it. He said, I have loved you with an everlasting love. So we can say, I love you, and then he demonstrate that love sacrificially by being there, by giving, by providing. So we have that opportunity to say it and to demonstrate
That's right.
it. So we can learn a new way of loving, even if in our family of origin, the expression of love was either absent or poor or, not so good.
Right.
But I want to add this quickly. There's also the issue where many times you come from a family where things are not very good, especially families where there's a lot of trauma, abuse and stuff like that. But then you connect, especially people coming to Christ. And that's why I love the family of God, because the family of God provides such a wonderful family of a second family of origin for many people, that new birth in Christ. So you come from a family, and I know a lot of people like that, came from really broken down families, but they got in contact with a spiritual father, a spiritual mother, a spiritual family, and they were able to relearn many ways of operating. So whereas their father was not committed, and generally they were on the path of non-commitment in relationship, in that spiritual family they saw a husband who was committed to his wife, and they said, you know what, I have a choice now, I have two examples, and they choose the better one, because most times that other family makes them feel like family, and they see the value of family, the value of connection, the value of being loved. And so the spiritual family is also very important.
And the communication. So we talk about expression of love. We put expression of love and communication the same thing, because it's an expression. Boy, you have a family, they shout from morning to night. Every conflict.
Yes. Or non-conflict.
Or non-conflict.
Yes.
It's just loud. And then you connect with somebody who comes from a family where they're probably too silent. And we're going to talk about conflict. So there will be a clash.
Yeah.
There will be some issues, because this is how I communicate. That is how they communicate. But how do you meet at a place where you can have effective communication? Yes. And so that is that sometimes will manifest. Okay, so let's go to the next one. By the way, how did your family communicate? Just type it in there. Yes. How did your family communicate?
No communication.
Was it
passive
silent?
aggressive?
Was it expressive?
Yes.
Yes. How did you show love? Was it silent? Was it expressive? You can, if you have the time, just tell us how that happened.
Can I share this quickly? I remember, and we still kind of deal with it. Nevin comes from a bigger family. He came from a family of 5 children. I come from a family of 3, but basically 2, because my brother had migrated so long. My brother migrated since I was about 10. Well, 9, 10. So I just grew up, one, with no men. And because I was a single parent with a mother, and I grew up with just 2 children. So it's my sister and I, and so you have 2 girls. We're always about, how you take care of yourself, how you look. So I used to tell my husband, we would have a can of tuna in our house, and everybody eat and tuna chori.
That could never happen in our house.
So that's it. So when we got married, I used to see this man just eating off everything, and I'm like, and then one day he explained to me, in our house, if you don't eat the thing quick, you won't come back and meet it. And I'm like, what? Because if we put something in our fridge at home, you don't touch it, we would actually say, Kizzy, you put that there, I can have peace. There was no rush for no food.
I have to find out Billy don't want the juice again, because they too God.
Like 3 days, I was drinking a box juice for 3 days.
And next thing she come, David, with the juice you did. I said, that would not have survived in our house for 2 hours. And so this is it. When I was
It was
growing,
a source of conflict in the beginning. I will tell
yeah,
you.
and sometimes it can be.
Yeah, because I'm like, boys, my thing.
But
don't
she
take my
understands
thing.
me a little better, and
I
I
don't
understand
like it,
her.
but I mean,
Right? No, I
I
understand.
understand
Right,
it,
right.
and that was so important because if it was, and there were other things too. But
Right.
when he explained and I explained, I'm like,
Right.
I don't
I
have to fight for
understand
food.
now.
There's two people in the house. I like nobody.
But here now, our family is now 5.
Oh boy.
I can just, they're not allowed to take up things without asking.
Yes.
But I can see a day, 9, 10, 11, when it's not going to last too long.
But even you mentioning that growing up, because my family was so small, most of our pots, and we are into cooking and stuff, our pots were small. Now we had a few big pots, and it's gonna sound weird, but it's a reality. And we cook like a cup of rice is enough for us with leftover for 2 days. Because like I say, it's all women, we're not chowing on a lot of food. So now I have a bigger family and I have to now expand. I have to cook 2 cups of rice or maybe some more. And I'm thinking I had to go back to measuring things because I'm like, I'm not accustomed to cooking so much.
That's
You know, so it changes, but you have to know where that came from. Somebody's
Yes.
saying here,
Yes, my father was very expressive.
Oh, that's
Mommy
interesting.
was more the silent one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice.
Because sometimes the woman is more the one who speaks a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so conflict.
Yes, a cup of
Resolution.
rice, and we would all eat, Cindy. 1 cup of rice. That's why swelling.
She comes from a big family, yeah?
You see, so the interactions are different.
Yeah.
We could cook a pack of chicken. Everybody, I remember everybody would eat 1 chicken wing, and we're satisfied. Because we're doing our vegetables or rice or thing. And when I got married, I never wanted so. I'm like, why are you eating so much chicken? You don't think about tomorrow? But we got to understand.
And she was raised with a man.
And I wasn't raised with a man. So I'm not accustomed to see man eat beside on TV. So we're all women who are like, we have to keep our waistline looking good. We have to do this. And so it's 1 piece of chicken and a 2 spoons of rice.
Yeah. And no, you might think these are small things, but I'm telling you, they can become problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, instead of that molehill, becomes a mountain. And so just be careful. Oh, conflict management and resolution. Oh my Lord. In some families, there is avoidance.
Yep.
They feel not talking about it means that this problem is solved, or the issue is resolved.
Yeah.
Not true. But that's how some of us were raised.
Yeah.
Don't talk about that issue there. That is not an issue for us to talk about. There might be abuse or history of abuse in a family, but it is never mentioned. And sometimes some people are raised by mothers who were abused and they never found out.
Or the mother never talked about it.
Never
Just
talked
always
about
said,
it.
it's okay.
But
Mommy will be all right.
then mommy operated in particular ways.
In her
to
parenting.
Men, in parenting, and to men. And unfortunately, that teaches the man and the woman, the children, how is it that you interact.
Yeah.
Right? And so they feel to reduce conflict, you don't talk about it. And then there's the other side, and Billy will talk about this in a moment. There's the other side where they talk it out.
Yes.
They work it out. In fact, some of them do it badly. They shout it out. They don't listen to each other. If you're in a big family where you're competing for attention, shouting it out and fighting it out may have been the way to deal with it. So you have to understand that. Did it? Go ahead.
But that's the thing. You see, we do things that work for us, even as individuals. Doesn't mean it's good. But if when I shout or I grab you, and that's what I saw, it got your attention.
Right.
You continue to do it
That's
until
right.
you're shown no. That actually hurts the other person. It's a disrespect of boundaries. But if you're in a family where that was how they interacted,
And that's how you got noticed.
that's how you got noticed. Eventually, you can learn that habit unless you educate yourself, like just through general education and to the Holy Spirit, that this is not how you get
Right.
attention.
And if you never deal with it, then you come to this marriage
Marriage.
or relationship. And the girl who is normally one where you don't talk about these things like that, you just ignore it. Gets married to a man where shouting was the way of
Yes.
operation.
Yes.
And some little conflict happens,
She walks away.
and he's shouting like a madman.
Or vice versa, and he grabs her, and then it's a shock. That's what you call a culture shock. That's a familial culture shock, because you're saying, I'm not accustomed to that. I think I said it a couple of times.
You have said that
I
to
said,
me.
my mother never talked to me so, or my mother never do that to me. No, he doesn't do things, but
Right.
it's just, as you're saying, it's just simple things. And you're thinking, what is going on here? I'm not accustomed to this. I don't need to deal with this. And so you find yourself in a place where you're thinking, do I want to continue to deal with this, or is this a deal breaker? But then the way they manage conflict becomes your way of managing conflict or not managing it. And then listen here, ultimately you are teaching your children something too. So that's why we talk about generational issues. There's generational trauma, there's generational patterns. They continue. Somebody has to decide to break the cycle.
Yeah. It stops with me. I'm going to learn to operate differently. Yeah. Some people, when they're trying to resolve issues, they walk out. They drive away. Some stay out for the night because that's how they learn. They avoided things instead of dealing with it. And so there's some families where they avoid the issues. They don't talk about it. They don't relate to it. They don't relate it. And so it just stays there, but it never goes.
It just festers.
Okay, finances, because we want to wrap up.
Just 2 minutes,
in the time that we have allotted it. 10 more minutes. Finances. You can learn how to deal with finances based on the family you come from.
Yes.
In one house, mommy dealt with all the finances. In another house, daddy was the only one who was working, and he was the only one you saw money with.
Or in one house, finances were your identity, and in another house, people were afraid of finances. And so you meet with somebody who is poor, and I'm not just talking about financially, but also having that poverty mindset. You meet somebody who was a little bit more, who thought money was their identity. And you have that conflict now because you're always trying to get money. You spend your life not just trying to provide for your family, but get money because that's who I am. And the conflict can arise because that's what you learn from your family. Men will tell their sons that if you don't have money, you are nothing. I remember watching a movie one time, and the guy said to the son, this is just an example, but not with money, but it's an example. He said, if you're not first, you're last. And one day the boy said, no, but you could be second, you could be third. The father said, no, if you're not first, you're last. And so he grew up with that thinking he must always win, he would do anything to win. If money is your identity, or if you were not taught how to handle money based on how you saw your parents living, buying everything they want, you can learn that, and financial problems are known to be major deal breakers in marriage. And so it's important that as a couple you learn financial literacy so you can build a new legacy and tradition in your family.
And you're talking about also financial transparency. So there's some families where the mommy was taught, hide some money.
Hide your money. Well, plenty of time women were taught that.
Have another account.
Oh, yes.
Don't tell him you have that money there.
Yes.
Tell him you need money even though you
have
and you don't need it. And you have plenty. And so sometimes we pass down those kinds of things.
And inherently that is dishonesty.
Yes, that's right. Or the man is always the one who earns the most money, and he's the one who has to spend the money, or the woman. I don't know which one you learned.
But I've had situations where the principle was the man got the money. So even when the woman made more money, she had to take all her money at payday and hand it over to the man, and then she'd have to go back and ask him for money for something else.
And that happens vice versa too. Yes. When the man worked, woman got all the money. Now, if that works for you, I guess that's fine. But if there's no agreement on that. So the key here is that there has to be agreement.
Yes.
As long as it's not abusive and as long as it doesn't take advantage of the other. Yes?
And you must be aware of where that pattern of behavior is coming from.
That's right.
Right? So you can make the steps to change it.
Yeah.
Yes. We're wrapping up.
And spirituality.
Yes.
Was spirituality a part of your family structure?
Cindy said, I'm not doing that at all. What is that?
Which is that,
sharing your money?
Buy buddies, buy the isn't it?
So you have to come to that agreement
That's right.
ultimately, because
So you can't just say that
you
Cindy
can declare your hand now
and
but
remain single,
yes,
right? But when you come together with somebody, there has to be an agreement in terms
well,
of
actually, when we were doing premarital counseling, that came up, and I remember clearly saying to the pastor, "Listen, he's not getting all my money. First of all, we could share together, but my philosophy is I can't come to you for every time I want a pair of shoe.
That's right.
For you to tell me I don't need that shoe, you don't know what I need.
Right.
So I always have my money."
Right.
We have our money and his money. Now, ultimately, my money is his money. So it's not it's not a hidden thing. Like he doesn't know what I have or where it is. But it's not yours.
Right.
That's my pocket money.
Some men were taught that the man ruled over the money.
Yes.
And so
even if they're poor, even if they're not wise financial
That's
managers,
right.
because they come from homes where they squander the money, they gamble, or they use it off, or they even use it on other women.
Mm-hmm.
But they will take the family's resources because that's what they were taught. The man must have the money, and the woman is earning and sweating to provide for the family, but he's squandering the money.
Always saying, maybe one of these days we talk about finance, we plan to, but the point we're making is that you come from different families and they have different approaches in terms of a deal with money. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, it becomes an issue in your marriage because there has, whether or not it's yours or not, there has to be an agreement in terms of how you operate. Yeah?
And I like that word because the Bible says, "Can two walk together except they agree?" Mm-hmm. Marriage is actually a journey. And for you to get any distance, for you to get to a destination, ultimately there has to be agreement.
That's right. That's right. So we identified there are many other areas.
Spiritual.
Spirituality. Mm-hmm. Were you raised in church? Were you raised to honor God? Were you raised to pay tithes? But that's another thing. Next thing you find out, your husband say, "Why are you giving 10% of your money?"
Church. And you've experienced that, yeah.
So you have to check that in your family. When you come together as in a relationship or couple, that can become a source of conflict. Mm-hmm. You can become unequally yoked. Yes? Unequally yoked doesn't just refer to different denominations or saved and unsaved. Mm-hmm. It may be even the way we see God and see church and life generally. Yes? Mm-hmm. And so that's another area where it can become an issue. Mm-hmm. Yes. What we are saying though, that we come from different families. Mm-hmm. We come from different backgrounds.
And we don't get to choose the families that we come from.
That's right.
We don't get to choose our past experiences or, expunge them from the record like you can do with a criminal record. Your family of origin, your experiences in those families are what ultimately have shaped you and will continue to shape you. And even if you choose to do differently, you're choosing because it happened.
That's right.
So it's still a part of
But
your life.
Matters. Your family origin matters. And so there's some things that we have suggested that you must do. Do your family contact tracing.
Yes.
They call it genealogy by another name.
Yes.
And so you have to be aware of that. And then map and see what it is that has happened in my family that I don't want to see happen in my family. Yeah. What are the patterns that we have identified, whatever the patterns are, and go about doing that. Be honest with yourself, yes, and be honest with your partner, and work through it together. Mm-hmm. Come to agreement. Your traditions in your family are your traditions. Yes. You don't have to follow the tradition of the family that you came from. That doesn't mean you throw it away. Yes. But you have to create your own family and your own traditions and establish your own patterns as it is. Yeah.
So just quickly, because we're finished now, just some questions you can ask as you're examining yourself, your relationship. What aspects of your parents' relationship or your spouse's parents' relationship do you admire? How did their families communicate? How did your family communicate? How did they solve conflict? How did they make decisions? Was it just the man who made the decision, or did we come together as a husband and wife? What were the communication patterns? These are things you can ask yourself. What was the family's approach to money and finance? That we talked about that, very important. What are some of the family traditions that you value and you want to continue? Let your spouse know that because they're important. And then what are the things that you want to continually celebrate? How do the family spend time together? There's some people who don't have that as a point of reference. The family just live their life. But you can ask that and begin to assess your experiences. And what role did faith play? Just summarizing all we have said. What role did faith play in your family life and in your spouse's or your partner's family life? And then you always have to ask this question: what are the concerns you have about the family? And are the concerns enough? Have you discussed the boundaries? Have you dealt with conflict in the family of origin? For instance, is one big thing. If the family don't like you for whatever reason, how do you deal with those things? Have you discussed, and you should discuss them, ask those questions so you could be fully aware, more aware, and it's a continual process of how your current relationships, your interactions, the way you love, the way you live, the way you learn and communicate is being impacted by the family that you came from.
And having come together, you develop your own traditions, your way of operating, and communicating and so forth. We think you can prosper, you can do well. Yes. So don't be dismayed. Many have crossed this, many are experiencing it, and you can get stronger and better. If you have any questions, you can ask. We will respond to them even after this live broadcast. But we are so privileged that you joined us for another edition of Muddy Puddles. We believe family matters. Your family of origin matters. So explore that. And you can go back and listen again in terms of the ways we suggest that you can explore it.
And just to say, at the end of the day, no matter what your family of origin is, any man who is in Christ is a new creature.
Amen.
All things are passed away, all things have become new. And you have a new Father who can teach you the right way to love, the right way to live, the right way to communicate. And no matter if you came from a broken down home, you can have an excellent family once you allow Christ to be the head of it.
And allow yourself to do introspection
and to grow
and acknowledge this is not something that was good for us. It's not something that is good for our family. I am going to do better. Joshua, who said, as for me and my house, the Joshua decided, you people over there can do what you want, but my house, this is what we are going to do. And so you have to establish that in your house. God bless you. Thanks for joining us. And may God bless your family. May God bless your new marriage, if you're newly married. May God bless your relationship in preparation for marriage. May God bless us all as we seek to become more like Christ and develop fulfilling, exciting, productive relationships.
Don't be afraid of muddy puddles. Sometimes you just have to jump in it.
That's right.
Have a good night, guys.